right. Well, we are expecting, as I mentioned, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to make an address from the White House in about 12, 13 minutes. That's when it's scheduled to begin. And that is after a 12-day tour of Asia in which the president discussed many topics from North Korea to trade with the leaders of Japan, of China, and other Asian countries as well. And we'll get some perspective now from a Republican lawmaker. Matt Gaetz was one of the House Judiciary Committee members who questioned Attorney General Jeff Sessions yesterday. Representative Gaetz from Florida joins me now live from Washington. Thanks for being with us. So we're hearing from Jeff Sessions many sort of different stories about what he remembers or doesn't remember about meetings that happened during the campaign, especially one in the Trump Tower. At first he said he didn't remember meeting George Papadopoulos. Then he said he did. Then he said he had to concede that he does, after having read press accounts, that he does remember something being mentioned about Russia. Do you concede at this point that Jeff Sessions' testimony is starting to become a little bit troubling to you?
Well, let me provide some context. Members of Congress meet with foreign officials and engage in roundtables multiple times every day. And so I can understand why the Attorney General might not have remembered a specific person at one of probably many meetings he had over the course of a day. It also doesn't sound like Mr. Papadopoulos had a very significant role in the campaign. He was sort of there as an unpaid advisor. And so I'm not troubled by it. I think that the Attorney General said what he believed to be true at all times. And look, I'm a lawyer, I'm a litigator. Oftentimes witnesses have to have their recollection refreshed, and I think that happened with the Attorney General.
And what about these communications between Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, and WikiLeaks? And we're not exactly quite sure who was at the other end of the WikiLeaks Twitter handle. What do you make of what was, is that something that concerns you?
Well, again, we'll have to see what really results from that. It's hard to really draw a nexus between a communication with WikiLeaks and any type of improper collusion with Russia, as has been alleged. But, you know, we'll see what information comes out. I do find it very troubling that the head of Fusion GPS, which was a Democratic Party paid-for opposition research entity, was meeting with this Russian operative the day before and the day after she met with Donald Trump Jr. That's very bizarre to have that type of a connection occurring on either side of that meeting with Donald Trump Jr. May very well have been a setup.
Okay, so can you expand on that? What do you mean a setup?
Well, if Fusion GPS was paid for by the Democratic Party and then maybe the FBI, I mean, it's important to note that yesterday we asked the Attorney General if the FBI paid for the discredited Fusion GPS dossier on President Trump, and he would not answer the question. So that in and of itself is troubling. But the fact that the person who was charged with digging up dirt and discrediting the president was meeting with this female Russian lawyer the day before and the day after her much publicized meeting with Donald Trump Jr., it seems to indicate that maybe there was a coordinated effort on the part of Fusion GPS to have Donald Trump Jr. in a, well, the proof is circumstantial, admittedly. Yeah, I'm not saying.
And also what we don't know that what you're saying happened, but we do know that Donald Trump Jr. exchanged many direct messages on Twitter with someone acting in the name of WikiLeaks. So this is something we know and has been admitted to.
Well, we know that meetings occurred with Fusion GPS and this Russian agent, this Russian lawyer. We don't know that it was a setup, but it certainly looks bizarre to have those meetings occur in such close proximity. As it relates to the WikiLeaks communications, as I've said, I have a hard time seeing what connection that leads back to Russia, as has been alleged by some of the folks in the opposition party, but we'll see as more information comes out.
Right, sure. And when what is it then about what you're hearing from Jeff Sessions that maybe has you thinking twice about whether or not you're getting the full account here? Because we got a lot of I don't recalls and a lot of instances in which Jeff Sessions has had to yesterday admit to things he many times denied before. And over the last several months, we've heard him change his story as well. First on never knowing whether or not anyone from the campaign met with a Russian agent, then little by little pieces of the puzzle coming together to final admissions that look very different from his initial declarations. Is there anything about what he said that is making you think that he's not being entirely truthful?
Well, if your question is whether or not Jeff Sessions perjured himself by knowingly making false statements, I don't see any evidence that that's the case. I do believe that the Attorney General had to have his recollection refreshed when it came to meetings where people may have been in and out. He described certain conversations that were in passing to provide some context to the Judiciary Committee yesterday. So again, that's not like unusual for a witness to have their recollection refreshed. And you know, Jeff Sessions was a surrogate for the campaign. He was certainly involved in the campaign, but it's not like the guy was the campaign manager who knew every single person and what they were doing and who they were talking to. And I think to expect that level of a detailed, memory on his part would probably be unreasonable.
All right, thanks very much. Matt Gaetz, a Republican representative from Florida. Thanks so much for joining us from Washington. And we want to return you to our top story. The military may be denying